Hey guys, good afternoon to all of you. Yet another session which is equally very exciting. It's all about the assessment centers, and I'm very sure you'll be very excited, and you will actually have a lot of takeaway from this assessment center. Okay. Once again, good afternoon to all of you. Yeah. So before I actually start this session, just wanting to have a little kind of an understanding as to, hey, anybody who's actually heard assessment center and what is the kind of understanding one has? Anybody? Nikhil, you want to kind of take a guess, or what do you think?
Sure. Assessment centers are basically where we do the potential assessment of an individual. Okay, and it is basically used for succession planning and also for elevation for the next level. We have been doing this for mid-level management within our organization. Where we conduct this kind of sessions, which has basically assessment on their competencies basis of their skill sets required, their technological adaptability, and also how they would be fitting the future requirement, be it the inline elevation or be it the cross-functional movement as well. So okay, that's what we conduct within our organization.
Some good understanding. Good. Very good. Anybody else? I'm just wanting to kind of, know.
So basically, the simplest understanding is that assessment centers are the centers which are used for continuous assessment of competencies which are required for either playing current role or future role. And it could be any. I mean, as you know, there are various types of competencies. So in assessment center, we can design various tools for assessing various types of competencies. So a few of the exercises are like in basket exercise, group discussions, role plays. So these are the few tools which are helpful in terms of assessing few of the competencies.
Great. Okay, according to current or future role, assessing in a continuous kind of a process. All right. Okay, anybody else? Lina, you want to take a guess?
Yes, it's. I haven't done it hands-on, to be very honest.
Yeah.
It was done with my counterpart, and I would draw upon this help for succession planning, learning, and to some extent performance management. But largely, these are the two areas I would work with them, and I would get those. Basically the repository of skills and the assessments that they have done based on competencies.
Okay, so more like what you're saying is that how is it used? The summary report, etc.
Yeah.
Okay.
The application being a HR
application of the assessment center. Okay.
Because I have not really done hands-on, which is the reason I'm here today.
All right. Okay. Anybody else? Vikram, you want to take a shot?
Yeah, I guess pretty much same definition.
Okay. Okay.
I have done multiple assessment centers in multiple assignments in my career.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So pretty much summarized in a right manner.
Okay.
From this context of session, it is an assessment of competency, which is knowledge, skill, and behavioral part of it. Yeah.
So, taking into consideration everybody's opinion, before I actually say what we cover, now you said assessment center is a process of evaluation, checking on knowledge, skills, and other things, right? Now, having said that, typically, how do we assess knowledge? Most of you are mid-level managers. Typically, how do we assess knowledge?
We do there some assessment in terms of their evaluation, or either by conducting some online test or something on those lines.
Okay. Like for example, somebody goes to say, entry-level positions, they have to hire bulk and they want to test the knowledge, to a college.
Giving an example, the content writer profile, you would like to evaluate by giving him some projects in terms of writing on certain assignment, and then evaluate his knowledge in terms of how well he has understood or how well he is knowledgeable in terms of drafting content. That
Right,
can be one of the
absolutely.
examples.
So what you're saying, the knowledge can be tested by asking questions or giving them a test in terms of to what extent do they have the knowledge which is required for the job, right? So it's easy. It's fairly easy. Now,
So also commonly,
yeah.
commonly under aptitude test.
Okay.
When you conduct aptitude test, you cover the requirements which are concerned. Typically, let's say,
Your voice is too low.
AEE or
He's actually traveling, I think. Okay. All right. Yeah. So when you go for a placement drive to the colleges, you want to take engineers at an entry level to test their knowledge. We give them knowledge-based examinations or tests, etc. Fairly easy. Skill. You want to evaluate skills. All this is a part of competency, but skill. How do we go about evaluating skill?
So we can ask for demonstration of particular skill.
Absolutely. Say, for example, I'm actually hiring a payroll manager, a payroll executive. Now, apart from understanding all the regulatory stuff and all the payroll way of thinking, then I will now want to know to what extent, depending on the level of requirement for me, the ability to use the softwares, the payroll softwares, etc. So I will actually ask him to, I will give him the PC and say, hey, please work on a spreadsheet, right? Okay. Like, for example, Nikhil mentioned, if I want to hire a content writer, I will give him a content piece, which is a skill actually. I say, hey, go about please writing. What does it establish? It establishes your proficiency to what level required vis-a-vis where he is. Fairly easy. Knowledge is easy. Skill is easy. But what do we tend to do? Please reflect back in your organizations when we have to test or when we have to evaluate the behaviors of that entire competency. Say, for example, for a customer customer executive, sales executive, you need customer focus, or for example, you need actually problem solving, etc. We tend to ask questions. We do an interview of half an hour or maybe 1 hour, but what do we do typically? We tend to ask questions. The same yardstick with which we test knowledge, with which we test skill. Typically, most of the organization tend to ask questions with regard to the behavioral skills, behavioral competencies. So therefore, do you think it is appropriate that you are able to actually justify and evaluate and find out the right behaviors in a person by using the same yardstick? No. So therefore, using assessment center. So let us see what are we going to do in assessment center. Okay. So the first and the foremost, I mentioned what? That we cannot use the same evaluation criteria to test for behaviors, just as the way we are testing for knowledge and skill. Okay, so therefore the assessment centers. Now, what are we going to cover? We will look at what is an assessment center, right? How are we going to design an assessment center? What are the basic rules of an assessment center? What is the flow of an assessment center? Then we will also look at assessment, designing an assessment center, what are the things or what are the elements which get into it. Then we'll look at some of the techniques used in assessment center, and we'll also look at the assessment matrix. So end to end, we'll look at the entire. So we'll look at it for say about an hour or so in a capsule course, because you have a lot of input in terms of material. And then we will actually do 2 exercises to try and have the feeling, the experience, and how do assessors process that data, so that you have a feeling of, yes, when you have a simulation exercise or when you have gone through some kind of a technique which is used in the assessment center, how does one assess that behavior? Okay, so this is what we are going to cover today. All right. Now, any of you are having anybody in the army, or your brother or your fathers, or do you know how actually a selection, what is the selection criteria in the army for an army officer or a navy officer, or for that matter air force officer, any of this, the selection criteria for an army officer in the defense forces? Anybody?
Yeah, totally from army background. That was
Who, Vikram?
Yeah, totally from army. That
wow, I can empathize. So we belong to the same, huh? My father in the army, my brother in the army.
Brother in army, friends in army, cousins in army.
Okay, great, great. So the best person. So what happens? How, I'm sure you know now. The best use case, or a good example of assessment center.
So the entire thing can be summed up in 3-letter words called Service Selection Board, SSB. Where,
yes.
First of all, there is an All India examination, aptitude examination, which includes test of language,
yes,
mathematics, logic, general knowledge. These are 4. If you clear that, then you go for Service Selection Board, where there is a physical, test done. There is a psychometric test done. There is a psychometric interview which is done. And while you are in a Service Selection Board, location, there is a whole lot of observation which is done by the instructors out there, assessors, and also there is a whole lot of observation which is taken by the peer group, the people who are undergoing undergoing with you. Typically in army, what they look for is something called OLQ, which is officers like quality, right? Similarly, the term in corporate is also used as gravitas, or executive presence, or leadership presence, right? In army, they call it OLQ. So if you don't have OLQ, you can't join army as an officer. It's very important to have OLQ. OLQ is nothing but competency. It's
absolutely
presence. Thank you.
So Vikram, great. So just to sum it up a little, so the army selection has 3 stages, as we said: a written examination, and then a whole lot of the second stage, which is the Service Selection Board, and then you have a medical examination. So thousands of people write this Union Public Service Commission, and then what happens? For our interest, the assessment center is the second stage. As rightly stated, we have verbal, non-verbal tests, picture storytelling, which is called TAT, right? Thematic perception test, where you are shown pictures and they will actually evaluate based on those stories written. And then there are psychological tests, word association, situation. Then thereafter, who all go through this. Then there is the 3rd and 4th day with group discussions, group planning, so individual obstacles, command tasks. So what are these? They're trying to, as Vikram said, officer-like qualities. They're constantly, what are they doing? All these assessors, they're observing, classifying. Then they will actually summarize, and then you evaluate at the end of the day. Then they will give you, either they will select you or not select you, right? So this is a very best example of an assessment center as to what happens in an assessment center. So typically, what is the flow? So let us come back. So what is the flow in an assessment center? The step 1, typically what happens is that step 1 in an organization, you're analyzing the roles and responsibilities as to what are they doing, what are their competencies, right? Thereafter, what do? Once you have actually created the entire competency model at an organization level, then you are looking at which level. So in assessment center, typically what happens, you are doing an assessment center for at least, a 10, because it's very expensive. So you are doing it for some good numbers in terms of at least 10 or 15 positions, 15 numbers or 20 numbers at a same level. So you are taking, say, maybe at an entry level, maybe at a junior level, maybe at a senior level. Now, typically research has found that you are doing assessment centers mostly 60 to 70% of the time in organizations at an entry level or at a senior level. Why? At an entry level, you are actually doing assessment center to hire candidates, to select the best. Guys, organizations which take a lot of care and rigor and discipline in hiring the best, actually then, are getting a very high performance, because there is a lot of correlation between hiring the right kind of a candidate with the performance. They are also doing assessment centers at a senior level. Why do they do? There, it is called a development center, where they are trying to understand the gaps in terms of leadership competencies, what kind of trainings can we give them for the or for the promotion purposes. So it's more for diagnosing developmental purposes. Okay, so in the second step, what are we trying to do? Once we have got the competencies, then we are trying to understand what are the tools, techniques, etc. What are the things we need to use so that we can assess the people on those competencies. Then the third step is you are conducting an assessment center through assessors by observing, okay, and then by classifying, summarizing, evaluating the entire assessment work which is done there. Then the fourth step is, then you are, through the summarized report, you either select or you either reject. Or if you are using it for developmental purposes, diagnosing purposes, then you are understanding the gap analysis, you're giving a feedback, then you are using it again for training need analysis. All right. So this is just to give you a kind of a flow as to what happens, where does it get kick-started. Having said that, this is so assessment centers can be done for your current level of competencies and also can be done for your future level of competencies. For example, saying that I want to actually, this organization want to move from point A to point B. That is, I want to become from 1,000 crores to say about 2,000 crores or 3,000 crores in 2 years time or 3 years time. Now, how do you want to grow? Maybe by diversifying products, or maybe by improving your product features, etc. So what are the kind of competencies you need to actually move? What are the capabilities in the organization you need to have from moving from point A to point B? So you start analyzing, and then thereby you are actually looking at, hey, where is my current capability? What is my human resource capital readiness at this point of time in terms of competencies? Then, having established the human capital readiness of competencies across the organization, when I say across the organization, that means across all the levels and roles of the organization, then I start beginning to understand, hey, if these are the gaps, then what is that I need to do? Okay, so by conducting an assessment center, then you get to know where am I, and then what do I need to do. All right, having said that, just want to give you a little about the history of the competency centers. Okay, it all started, I'm sure all of you know, in the World War II, you needed a lot of good officers because you needed to they were to go into such horrendous places and then man so many soldiers. You needed really, steadfast kind of officers. So what Vikram said, like officer like qualities. So what did they do? They said, hey, how do we get them? So they started using a lot of these group tests, psychological tests, psychometric tests. They use actually psychiatrists and psychologists. And then they found that this process actually gave them very good officers. So when they found success in this, it went and it evolved into what? Then the British civil service, they started using this assessment process of using a lot of tests, discussions, etc. And they found a lot of good results. And thereafter, when then if you see, when the private sector, that is companies, started seeing that, hey, whatever the British civil services are using, they are having actually very good officers. They're able to get very good performance. So why not try that? So AT&T really went into a big way. They did a lot of management progressive studies. They did longitudinal studies. They did a lot of research, and they were the ones who started this assessment centers, and they found a lot of success in it. And then once AT&T followed, had great success, they achieved a lot of success, then other organizations followed like IBM, etc. And I think in the 70s, it really exploded. In the last 30, 40 years, I think most of the organizations are using assessment centers in a big way. Essentially, why? They were using assessment centers in a big way because they found that by hiring people through assessment centers, they were able to correlate the quality of people they took with the performance. So you are seeing, that means there is some kind of a reliability. That means they were able to validate through some kind of a test as well, that is called correlation. We'll get into that a little later. What is this correlation we use, right? Okay, so that is a little about the historical perspective. So it is not new. Assessment center is something not new. It actually emanated from the time World War II. All right. So having said that, so somebody said it's a continuous assessment. Well, I will actually defer. It's not a continuous assessment. It's a process, yes, but you can have it whenever you needed one. So as an assessment center is a comprehensive. Why am I saying comprehensive? Because it uses multiple tests, multiple tools, and it is standardized. It's a standardized procedure. And to evaluate individual employees for a variety of decisions, for selection, for promotion, for succession planning. So like most of you said, so it uses through what? Through situational exercises, job simulation, etc. A variety of tools and techniques. So you are able to evaluate an employee and then use it for a variety of decisions. Now, typically, just to show you a design of an assessment center, as mentioned earlier, it starts with a competency map, because that's very, very important. Because what are you actually assessing in an assessment center? You are assessing the behaviors. And where are the behaviors flowing from the competencies? That is, the knowledge gets assessed, as I discussed earlier, through tests. The skill also gets discussed as doing some work on the job. You actually get the person to do it. But what about the other things? The traits, the motives, the attitude. So essentially, which cannot be, because it cannot be evaluated through just a test, because that is below the water, submerged. So it's not easy to just ask a question. You ask a question, hey, are you a great team player? And what will Nikhil say? Yes, I'm a great team player. But then, would you really know? Does it have validity, or does it have reliability? So you need to really, use another method. You just can't ask a question, because obviously the interviewer will always respond in a very positive way. Yes, I'm a great team player. Oh, do you have negotiation skills? Yes, I do have good negotiation skills. But in effect, does he really have? How does he use? What happens? So to what proficiency level does he have? So you need to understand those behaviors. So therefore, so the first step is the competency map. Then you select all the exercises or the tools and techniques which can evaluate those behaviors of the competency by actually creating what we call it as an assessment matrix. We will just come to that in a while. And then once you do that, the assessors will observe. As I said, there's a word called observe, classify, summarize, and evaluate. and that's how you get an assessment report. Let us actually see. Okay. Typically, before we actually start framing an assessment matrix, what are some of the tools we use in an assessment center? You have already talked about in-basket exercises. Anybody who wants to generally talk about what is this exercise when we say in-basket exercise?
So basically,
yeah.
As per my understanding, in basket exercises, 10 to 12 different exercises are given on a piece of paper, or they are described to a particular candidate. And then the candidate is given particular time. Let's say he has to complete all these 12 tasks in a span of 1 hour. And then assessors will see how effectively this person has completed this 10 to 12 tasks in stipulated time period.
Okay, very
That's what my understanding.
Say, for example, I'm Nikhil and I've come on a Monday and my inbox is all piled up, all right? And it has so many 30 or 40 kind of, assignments there, work in basket is full. And then I look at it and I have something like 3 to 4 hours. So I'm looking at them. Some one sheet. One work tells me that hey, another one says you have to live in assignments of different nature, different urgencies, and different degrees. So what happens? So in an in-basket, so when we are actually simulating. We are telling, hey, this manager has come there and he's got so many assignments to do. So how is he going to actually plan his work within the time schedule? So is he going to delegate, or is he going to carry all the monkeys, finish all the tasks? Is he going to prioritize? Is he going to list 1, 2, 3 and look at each and every one without even looking at which is important, which is urgent? Or is he also going to look at it observation? Because sometimes you miss out, you are in a haste, you are just looking at things and pass by, maybe you are making mistakes. So is he observant? So an in-basket exercise is an individual level exercise. It gives you what? This exercise simulates you to actually demonstrate your planning, prioritizing, delegating, observing, etc. Okay? Let us look at group discussions. Yeah, anybody wants to throw light on a group discussion?
Still not clear on in-basket exercise. Means there's
Nickel?
still...
All right. Think you are Nickel and you've come on a Monday morning. All right.
I got that example.
Your inbox, you have 20 or 30 assignments to do. 30 mails you have. All right. Now, so you have a time frame in 3 hours or 4 hours. So will you start looking at each and every mail and start attending to it? Your approach towards the 30 mails. So, or will you just look at and say which is urgent, which is important, can it be done later, or will you delegate? So as a manager, what are you looking at? That means within the time frame, you have certain kind of a volume of work. How are you going to finish that task? Are you going to do everything on your own? Then you might actually miss the bus of actually, consuming more time as in how much of time you have, or are you going to delegate some of it, or are you going to look at in terms of priority, urgency? So what is the kind of outlook you have? How are you going to finish the task? Okay, so it is a simulation. You have your mail has 30-40 assignments to do.
No, but usually in a real life scenario, in case how it can be evaluated, means you would be monitoring that individually, how he is being acting on it, or...
Yeah, so in a real life, what happens if you're a manager and you have some amount of work, your efficiency is also thrown up. No? If you're not able to finish your work on time, which is very, very critical, say for a manager, planning is very important, right? Delegation is important for a sales manager. So what if he's going to actually do everything what even a sales rep is going to do? So if I have to promote somebody from a sales manager to above, so what are those key competencies required? And if, say for example, planning and organizing becomes a critical competency, I need to then evaluate that competency. So can I start asking questions as to, hey, how are you going to do? No. So there are two ways of looking at it. I can either give you a simulation exercise, which is an in-basket, or I can also do a BEI, what we call it as behavior event interview. I will come to that technique a little later. Okay, Nikhil, so have you understood that? Because it's very, very important. In-basket, what does it test? Here are the 30 mails. How are you going to go about it? They could be urgent, they could be not urgent. There are some things which your even a subordinate can do, etc. Right?
Sure.
Okay. Group discussion. What is the outcome when I'm actually using a group discussion? What is the outcome?
There are two ways, means there are two important aspects. One is understanding how well a person is able to communicate effectively. When I say effectively, make his point of view, and also it also helps in terms of how people are adaptive in terms of taking feedback or involving other as well. So it also shows in terms of a person will be too aggressive, will he be succumbing to pressure, or at times he will be a person who will be introvert or an extrovert. So these are all what is being evaluated out of group.
Absolutely, Nikhil, you are on the right plan. So group discussion can be two types. Now I can have a group discussion. Hey, somebody please mute that because a lot of echo comes here. Now, in group discussions, one could be leaderless group discussion. Like if you recall, when you had to go and join an MBA, you have no leader. So everybody starts shouting because they feel that hey, the observer is going to watch who's the leader. So leaderless group discussions and also leader-led discussions. So the ultimate outcome, what you want to watch is, are people, if you are wanting to see, hey, how if in a leaderless, how somebody can take a role of a leader, right? That is one. Then how are people actually bringing the team together? Okay, then is there some kind of a collaboration when they are discussing around a subject as to listening to the other person's point of view, or just cutting it short? Okay, then how is he very aggressive or is he assertive? Okay, with what conviction? So everything, that is what they say, what they do, and the body language. So everything is observed, right? Because as we say that our body language says it all, right? So especially when you are doing a simulation exercise, you are closely observing everything and then noting down all the behavior. So group discussion also can be used for 3 or 4 behaviors, like both the spoken communication, how is he presenting his views, etc. So as per the requirement, we can use group discussions. Interview simulations. So interview is also one of the tools or techniques you can use in terms of, it could be a very structured interview. It could be a stress interview, not necessary that, see, the job may be very stressful. So you want to actually see, hey, how does this guy withstand during stress? Is he pressure bearing? Sometimes some people can't bear pressure. But if this 90% of the time this job is, like for example, I would say industrial relations manager, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of stress dealing with unions, dealing with management, dealing with the external regulator. There's a lot of, so there are certain jobs which have a lot of pressure. So you want to use, so these are certain tools. Now we will look at for what kind of a behavior and competency are you going to use what tool. Then you can use structured interviews. Then you can use talent measures, psychometrics, role play exercises. So various. So these are a list of tools you can use for assessment centers. So the similar thing I was actually looking at here, some at an individual level, some at a group level, some at some are exercises, some are interviews, and some could be tests. Like for example, I'm sure a lot of times when you want to, Vikram was just mentioning, you want to look at ability tests, word tests, verbal tests. So you use pen and paper, a lot of those tests, right? You also use a lot of psychometric tests, MBTI, FireRoby. I've actually given 1 or 2 of them so that you get a kind of a profile of yourself. Okay. Now, case studies. Case studies also a very common way of. It's a tool which is being used in assessment centers. Anybody can tell me why are case studies also a common tool in assessment centers? What kind of behaviors will it showcase?
It shows a pragmatic approach of an individual. It's relatively basically more easier to relate how a person would behave in a certain situation of a job. So be it assessing his people skill, you can give him a case study related to the people skill in terms of evaluating his decision making as well. So case study helps in terms of evaluating those parameters.
Absolutely. Case study typically other than even looking at from the people perspective, you just can't ask a person, hey, does he have a strategic orientation? Does he have business acumen? So if you give a case study, then he is able to analyze the case. How does he analyze? What kind of orientation does he have? On what dimensions does he analyze the case? So you get various dimensions to it. Okay. So case study actually helps a lot in most of the time, especially in middle manager and senior management assessment centers. We tend to use case studies. In fact, if you go for these entry, not only entry level, for your admission to management colleges. I don't know now, but earlier we used to have a case study so that you had to discuss the case. The case was given early, much before the interview, and you are given that case. You have to present the case. So there is some amount of presentation, because how do you analyze the case? All aspects of it. Okay, it gives you in totality. How does this person analyze the entire thing? All right. Now, having said that, there is some kind of predictive validity, means I can predict that assessment centers are, the ability to hire at a much better person as in compared to the other methods. Now here the predictive validity of all the assessment center tools. So when you use if you look at cognitive ability tests, that is structured interviews, they have a higher predictive validity. What does it mean, predictive validity? Predictive validity means every time I give this test, there is consistency, and then there is the same thing, I'm able to get the same results. Like for example, there's a weighing machine. Today you weighed, and again tomorrow you are weighing. Okay, so it should give you, okay, if it is for after 10 days, 15 days, probably there will be a change. But if you are measuring, it should give you typically the same weight. So what I meant by predictive validity is whether you give the test or another assessor give the test, the outcome is the same. So in terms of structured interviews, the predictive validity is much, much higher. Okay, so in fact, these were some kind of a research done by McLaren, who said that, in terms of what I meant is education, in terms of premium education and IQ scores, they did not predict much, but what predicted was the absence or the presence of competencies. And therefore he talked about structured interviews, which more in terms of he meant behavioral event interviews. We'll talk about that in a little while. Okay. Yeah. So, okay, let me just give you a little interesting note on what is the difference between AC and a DC. Okay. Before that, yep. So all of you must have heard of, yeah. Vikram?
Yeah, I have a question before we go ahead.
Yeah.
Can you please go to that slide?
This one?
No, the previous slide, which has all the, prior to this one, please. Yeah, tools for, so just had a question in my mind, is that which tool to be used for what kind of a role. So for example, there are certain roles which are individual contributor role, and there are some roles which are people, managers role, and there are some roles which are strategic in nature, while
Yes.
they are individual contributor role, and while there are some roles which are at leadership level role.
Right.
So is there any demarcation of which tool is to be used for which role?
Absolutely. When we come to the competency matrix, here I'm just giving you a list of tools just for your understanding, in terms of that there's a list of typical tools exist this way. But when we are talking about competency matrix, in essence, it's a table where you say if what has to be assessed, then how are they going to be assessed? What are the tools which are going to be assessed? So which tool will actually then demonstrate which kind of a behavior, okay? Or how am I going to evaluate? How will I select a particular tool? Got it? So in fact, for any role, whether it's strategic in nature or, as you said, entry level, so we will look at that in a while when we're talking about competency matrix. Is that okay, Vikram?
Yeah, for example, we spoke about the Army selection process, where apart from all the tools which are used, the risk involved is huge, and the risk is of not just your own life, but the life of men and now women that you'll be leading. You actually are putting the risk of individuals in line. And the bigger risk is you are actually putting your country at stake. Right. So hence there is a very elaborated kind of assessment, and not just at entry level, but at training stage also. You are being assessed constantly. There is assessment. In fact, even while you are in service, you are constantly assessed for the next posting, next role, or a secondment, or so on and so forth, because the risk involved is significant. So is that also a consideration?
Consideration for, are you talking about the corporate roles, or are you talking about just taking army selection as such?
No, any role. Now these tools are being used in management also as a best practice.
Yes.
But if I have to look at the risk, if I have to look at the whatever level risk, various factors, tactical aspect of it. So just wanted to understand what tool is used at which level, and if you have that coming up, then it's go.
Yeah, we have that coming up. But to respond, as you mentioned, so assessment organizations which actually recognize the kind of market forces, okay, and the VUCA world, what we call it as, and so therefore constantly your readiness to serve the customer, the expectations of the customer as of yesterday or 2 decades is so different from what it is today. So therefore your capability internally, so you need to actually develop that capability as an organization. So all the more reason that sometimes what happens typically, so assessment centers should become a continuous process in terms of at every level. Hey, what are those skills and competencies which are required? So maybe I need to sometimes totally reskill, because and especially in IT, ITs, etc., along with all the technical skills, even behavioral skills also. So you need to reskill them or upskill them. In fact, you have in compensation something called skill allowance for if you have a skill which can be used later, so you are actually incentivizing him, rewarding him. Okay, so reskilling, upskilling based on what? Based on the constant assessment centers you have in organization. More of a culture now in terms of having assessment center, because they are as opposed to just an interview or other processes, the assessment center is a combination. You are using multiple tools. So therefore, based on the evaluation criteria, so therefore your outcomes are far more predictable as in compared to the other just mere interview process. Because ultimately you want better predictability. whether you are selecting or whether you are promoting or whether you want to use it for diagnosis purposes. Okay, so we will come to that in terms of how do you design your competency matrix. All right. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, just to give you a little understanding on, I'm sure most of you must have heard of assessment center and a development center. So primarily they may look the same, but there are a lot of differences in terms of, assessment center and development center. They use those same multiple tools, techniques, etc. But the purpose, while in assessment center, the purpose is to select a person. So there is not much of a feedback being given to him, excepting just a report saying that, okay, you are here. But a development center is more of diagnosis in the sense that it is much more caring and nurturing at that point of time, even while you are doing that, running that center, because you're wanting to understand the gaps. Let's say, for example, your middle level managers. So you run a developmental center understanding that, hey, what are those gaps for either development or training, or you want to promote, or you want to do succession planning. So the purposes are different. Okay, and there's a lot of feedback, coaching thereafter in development center, which is not there in assessment center. And then in development center, the participant who has actually gone through this, he has also some amount of ownership, both for him and also for the organization. But in an assessment center, you're either selected or rejected. So therefore, there's not much of an ownership there. Okay. All right. So these are the various tests where we can talk about in terms of skill tests, pen and paper tests. If you see personality and motivational tests like an MBTI or a 16PF or a FIRE-OB. So all of these give you a kind of a profile about your personality. Like sometime back, Vikram mentioned about, are there any tests which are given at a senior management level, etc. Like for example, as a director for Ernst & Young, when we had to conduct an assessment center for IOC right from the top level of ED. So for mid-level, I think we were using the MBTI and also the 16PF. Okay, but definitely decisions are not taken just based on personality test. They only give you a support. They give you an insight, and you have to collaborate with the other tests. Now, ability tests. These are a list of ability tests here, and they're already given there in your now. So all these tests, how do you select a test? The test should have validity. So what does validity mean? Anybody? Somebody who just talked about validity, just wanting to understand if anybody wanting to
Relevance.
Pardon?
Relevance.
Yeah, relevance. Okay. Anything else?
Some credibility that yes, you have certified, like Thomas profiling. Okay, they do this profiling. If you certify that, you become an international Thomas profile practitioner. PPA they call it as.
So here is it. I mean, you can also validity is simply put as accuracy. So when you are actually using a particular test, you also want accuracy. So when I say accuracy, what do I mean by it? For example, just look back. You are hiring people, okay? So your interviewers are conducting tests for the candidates. So you will have an interviewer rating, right? You will have an interviewer rating. Now you want to look at 2 or 3 interviewers rating and say, hey, which interviewers are really good? Okay. Now, what do? So one is quantitatively looking at it using a correlation method, which is called a Spearman's correlation method, saying you are looking at the interviewer's rating. And of the same set of candidates, you are looking at performance rating. So that means if you want to look at 3 or 4 interviewers as to who is a good interviewer or who is a bad interviewer, you want to validate, then what will you do? You will take the interview ratings of these 4 interviewers of a set of 10 candidates. Then you look at their performance rating and you look at correlation. Okay. Then if there is a high positive correlation, that means a high positive correlation between interview ratings and performance ratings. So that means there is validity of saying that, hey, this A interviewer is a good interviewer because it correlates with the performance. So validity is testing for accuracy. So sometimes when you want to test for accuracy and whether this particular test is actually accurate in testing, you can do correlation and check out. Okay, so accuracy. Now, what is reliability? Anybody? Reliability?
How reliable is the test?
Yeah, reliable means how dependable.
How dependable is the test?
Right? Like for example, Nirmala has conducted a test using a technique, okay? And she has conducted a test on Lena, right? So there is certain kind of a result, an output. Now, Vilma also used the same test and conducted it on Lena, okay? Now there is an output. Now, should the output be the same? So what does it mean? I'm trying to say, when you are using a test, the output should be reliable, whether A does it, B does it, or C does it. Got it? And what we typically call it as inter-rater reliability. That means irrespective of whoever does it, whoever does the test, whoever administers the test, the output should be the same. So only when the output is the same, then there is reliability in the test scores. For example, I have given, for example, the MBTI tests. So, no, I didn't give MBTI, FireOB, I think. FireOB and Wellbeing. So if you do it, so if the test is reliable, typically the same score should appear again and again whenever you take this test. Okay? Right. Acceptability. What is acceptability? I like Vikram to respond to this because he had a question. So it's going to actually help him understand. Acceptability. Vikram, you want to take this test, question?
Acceptability would be contextual, basis organization's requirement and at what stage the organization is. So for example, a startup may want to take assessment which can be different than let's say ONGC, for example, which is at a very mature stage. This is my understanding, but please guide in case if there is something different to it.
So when I talk about acceptability, so assessment center, now that you know that it has a lot of multiple criteria using a lot of tools in. Now, so if there is senior management or senior positions and I have to use particular tests, I need to have their acceptability. Like, I need to understand, hey, what is their acceptance in terms of if I use these tools and techniques? Because unless and until there is acceptability, there won't be ownership while they are actually doing that assessment center or a development center. Okay. So that is called acceptability. And of course, cost and time, within what time, and then because assessment centers are very, very, they cost a lot. So you need to understand, for whom and within what cost. So budgets are very, very important. But those three, validity, reliability, acceptability, are very important for running any assessment center. Okay, because ultimately it is the kind of selection of the tools or techniques which we use to determine, because they are the ones which are actually going to evaluate the competency criteria or the successful criteria of a job or a role. Okay, having said that, So this is what we are talking about, reliability, since I've already explained. So I'm not actually repeating this. And, yeah.
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yeah,
If I may.
please. Huh.
You're talking about reliability and acceptability. Okay, this is something that I've had issues in the past. I'm MBTI certified myself, but the issue is after you've hired, a couple of engineers or consultants who come back telling me, I faked in your test. I faked it. Okay, and this has happened. Okay, it has happened. I mean, I've constantly faked. I mean, HR test, forget it. I mean, I've faked. So how do you handle something like this? Because they do it. I mean, they're extremely smart. It's a fact. But how do you deal? I mean, with this kind of a situation? Of course, I mean, some of them, those hires have been there's a mix.
I get your question. I get your question, Lina. So here's the answer for it. Yeah. So typically what happens, because I've been doing a lot of work in this area. So typically what happens is when you are conducting an assessment center, right? And whether it's entry level, senior level, middle level, etc. And when you said we are using maybe an MBTI or maybe a 16 PF, etc. Now, these psychometric tests are supposed to be used as an input with the other outputs of all that which has come from the other exercises. And then an assessor looks at the data and only something really stands out. But you cannot judge a person just by the basis of a psychometric test. Let me tell you, that is a fundamental thing when because I use MBTI, I use FireOB, I use most of the instruments, okay? And let me tell you, that's very, very key. It gives you a little understanding, but you need to then keep that and check with the rest of it. And when you see that there's a huge variance, then you're not actually inferring and telling, oh, this person is this. No, then you're going to check for more information. Then you're going to probe further the candidate. And when will you do that? When you think you have actually taken a decision, he's the closest fit and I want to hire him. Then you feel that, hey, but there is a variance. I think I need to check further. I need to probe further. And then you will again use a BI to probe further and further. When I said, that is, you will look into past critical incidents and how has he behaved, what has been the action. So the nature and the proficiency level of that action will actually then say a lot of things. Even those critical incidents will say a lot. So you need to gather more information. Whenever you have a doubt, you need to get more information, but not take a decision or not infer and say, hey, this person is this, therefore I can't take it. Okay? Yes, Lina? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So typically this is what we call it as assessment matrix. So what does it mean, assessment matrix? So here in this column, if you have noticed, all those behaviors or competencies which you want to test. For example, at a very simple level, oral communication, written communication, leadership, analysis or judgment, planning and organizing, delegation, etc., etc. Now, these are all the tools and techniques. So typically when you are designing a matrix, what will you do? You will list out all the behaviors you want to evaluate, and then you will start looking at a list of tools and techniques and say for example, this is group discussion 1, leaders group discussion 2, this is some scenario planning schedule, this is fact finding, okay, in basket there. So every exercise or simulation you have, it should actually at least oral communication. So it is getting evaluated in 2 exercises. Then written communication in 1, 2, 3, 4 places. Okay, leadership. So analysis, judgment. So all these behaviors you want to evaluate, they should be evaluated at least in 2 or 3 exercises, just not 1, because there will be 2 or 3 observers who will be observing in different situations, and they are able to then observe and document, so that it is not that you are making a judgment based on just one simulation. Okay, we'll go a little further here and we will see what. And
hello.
Yeah, yes.
Ma'am, can you go to previous slide, please?
Yeah, so I thought this is a better one for you all. This is more similar one, because
Okay.
that was not so clear, so I thought I can use this. Yes, this is who, Nikhil?
No,
Yeah.
Ram, but
Ram.
I got it now, because earlier I think the boxes with
Yeah, so I
black
thought this
color.
was better.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So I think
So,
these box.
So
Sure,
if
sure.
you look at these are all the competencies. Under these competencies, these are the key behaviors. So I'm using interview, role play, group discussion, case study, in-tray, presentation. Now, so each behavior has to be observed at least, if not 3, at least in 2. So you can see all these star marks where you can see that, like for example, planning and organizing can be observed in 3 simulations, right? So you have this total where, like, this is 3, then decision making 3, then problem solving also it looks at 2, where all case study and also in group discussions. Then strategic orientation, it looks at 2 or 3. Then conflict handling, it looks at how many? 3 places, 3 tools. Then innovation, it looks at 2 places. Okay, you may ask me, like, innovation, my God, how does one actually, what kind of a tool one can use in innovation? Anybody, any ideas? Any ideas to what kind of a tool can one use, or what technique will you use to evaluate innovation in an assessment center?
Situational scenario.
Yeah. Any other?
Business simulation, will it help? I doubt, because innovation, business simulation techniques.
Or even in his past history, he or she, what new initiatives or ideas he has come up with.
Case studies.
If you're talking about.
Yeah, okay. Since Vikram has done some of it, Vikram, you want to throw light?
For innovation, case study could be one.
Okay. Coming up with a lot of suggestions, is it? In case study, solutions and all that. Okay. So typically here is it. Even at a mid-level, what we used quite often, and it really works. So while doing innovations, typically, okay, unless it is R&D, you also are looking at a team-based, how people really work in a team. So what we do is we give a nice, interesting exercise, and I'm sure some of you must have done it. When I talk about it, then you will think, oh yes, we have done it. So we typically give them straws and pins and stickers and everything. They'll say, hey, this is the time given. We make them into 1 or 2 to 3 groups in the assessment center, and then we'll tell them, okay, you are given 1 hour. All right, you need to then construct or make with these pins and all that material a building, and we give them a size, and it has to stay at least stable for some time, how much time, etc. So you will see that interestingly, when they are working, we then start observing how are they helpful. Then is it like, no, this is the way it has to be. Some people, sometimes, the group is not able to actually do anything. So some groups are so innovative, they'll come out and they will make such a strong pillar. So there are a lot of behaviors which come out of this. So very interesting. I can share that exercise with you all. It's a very established, standardized thing for creativity and innovation. Okay, but if, of course, then we also you can give a group discussion topic and you see how people are innovative, coming up with, there's a problem and how are people actually coming up with various innovations, where you are also giving a time constraint and a cost budget, etc. Like, for example, typically what we do for an HR people, supposing we are actually having benefit and variable pay kind of people where we are wanting to assess them, then we'll say, okay, fine, come out with a very innovative variable pay plan within this cost budget. Okay, and then it should, within the time frame, and cost is very important, and you should see people really come up with very interesting scenarios. Okay, so these are some of the things when you are actually looking at innovation. Okay, yeah. Now I want to actually then respond to Vikram's question, saying that Vikram had a question. When we are actually planning or when we are designing an assessment matrix, that is, what are the techniques for which behaviors am I evaluating? So when it comes to entry level or manager level or senior leadership, yes. So what we look at primarily is it that with the kind of competencies we are looking at. Say, for example, typically at top management, we are looking at what strategic orientation or a business acumen or result orientation. Okay, so based on that, what are the kind of behaviors you want to look at, and then you are designing such tools and techniques which will actually help you in evaluating or looking at those behaviors which you want to in terms of the business acumen. So typically in a business acumen, we give a nice simulation, business simulation. And these days you get excellent business simulation. So you are the CEO and, we give them, so we want to then reduce some costs and you want to increase the revenue turnover. You also have a hand in terms of product diversification or only improvement of product features. So typically an entire business case. So if we are looking at people skills, then definitely then we are looking at again at some kind of a group discussion where we give them a topic and they're able to generate a lot of ideas. It's a leaderless group. We want to see how does the top management actually are able to collaborate or also open to others' opinions, views, or are they very assertive, aggressive, etc. Okay. So Vikram, does that help you in some way?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the kind of tool or a technique you want to use is based out of the kind of behaviors you want to evaluate. So obviously the behaviors are again aligned with the kind of levels or roles the competencies are embedded. Okay. All right. Okay. I wanted to give you a small, maybe you can just, it's already there. So if I were to say that for a sales manager, please list, after this we'll take a small break, but please bear with me, a quick exercise. Sales manager, why sales manager? Because I thought most of you are familiar with the sales manager. Now, identify only 3 critical behaviors, okay, which you think are very critical for his performance, and then list out just 3 or 4 tools or exercises in this kind of competency matrix, which you think you will use them to assess those 3 critical behaviors. Are you clear about what I want you all to just work on, so that I am convinced that you have understood? Yeah. Hi group. Hi all.
Hi.
Where? Huh?
Yeah. So you're looking.
What you need to do is,
yeah.
the role is sales manager. Okay. And typically all of you know what is the role of a sales manager in terms of what are the kind of tasks he does or whatever. List out in a kind of a column what are those 3 critical behaviors you think, like you can list out here. Okay, 3. And then list out here the exercises, 4 exercises which you think will assess these 3 behaviors. And now, say for example, negotiation skills is one of the things I'm just mentioning. Then where does it get assessed? Okay, so each exercise should at least, each behavior should be at least evaluated at 2 places. Got it? So I want you to design a assessment matrix. Position, sales manager. All right. List 3 critical behaviors which impact or affect his performance. Then list out those exercises you will use to assess these behaviors. Got it? You can create a small chart like this. 10 minutes, guys. That's good enough. Then probably I will ask 1 or 2 people to share this exercise. So please do it on an Excel sheet. Yes, guys. Ready?
Yeah, I am ready with whatever I could think of. So should I
Okay.
share my screen?
This is, who is
Ram
this?
Chandra.
Ram. Okay. What about the others? Are you almost there?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So yes, Ram.
Yeah, so let me start sharing my screen.
I would have two people show their screen so that.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen. Yeah.
Okay, so this is what I could think of in terms of key competencies: communication skills, negotiation skills, conflict resolution, empathy, and customer focus. And various tools which I have selected are in basket, behavioral interview, GD, role play, and psychometric. So I will use in basket and BEI and GD for assessing communication
Yes,
skill.
I can see.
For negotiation, I will use in basket and group discussion. For conflict resolution, I will use
negotiation skills. How will you use in basket for negotiation skills? Just wanting to know.
I'll on a piece of paper, I will write particular scenario, and then I will see how he.
Okay, you are going to give some kind of an assignment in
Right.
basket so that you can test negotiation.
Right,
All right.
right,
Okay,
right.
I take that. Yeah, a case kind of a thing. All right.
For conflict resolution, again, role play and group discussion, because you know that involves how you are dealing with the conflicting opinions of others. For empathy, again, I will use BEI, GD, and psychometric tool.
Okay.
And for customer focus, again, I will use in basket, BEI. Yeah,
Okay.
these two.
All right. Okay. Good show. I think good job done. Yeah. Anybody else? One more. I want to just see one more.
Yeah, Nirmala, I have not made a Excel sheet, but I can verbally.
No problem. Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Okay. My first skill would be planning, and the tool that I would be using is through case study. Yeah, that's one. One more skill, and I'm not talking about behaviors right now. One more skill which I would definitely want a sales manager to have is data orientation, which is understanding of the numbers. And I would have him or her take a assessment which is data interpretation test.
Okay.
So these are two skills that I've thought of. In terms of behavior, one of the behaviors which I've thought of is perseverance, and I've thought of perseverance because in sales, as we are aware, the success rate is good 10 to 15%. The rest 85 to 90% are failures, and hence this person is going to face a lot of no's and rejections. So perseverance is a very important behavior he needs to demonstrate to himself or herself, and hence I would do competency-based interview and psychometric assessment. One more skill which I would like to mention. So I mentioned about 6 of them, but one more behavior which I would like this person to have is negotiation skills, as also mentioned rightly by Ram. And on that, I would use 2 of the tools, which is a competency-based interview and case studies. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. Excellent, guys. Okay. Having said that, now there's another very interesting tool. I have used it personally whenever we, as an organization, whether it was Ernst & Young or both as a consultant and also as a practitioner, use this tool, and especially at senior level and at top management level, which is called multi-rater feedback, or what we call it as 360 degrees feedback. Okay, and this tool can be used also as one of the tools for assessment center. Okay, I'm sure some of you have heard of multi-rater feedback or 360 degrees feedback. Now, typically, how does it work? How does this tool work? So what do you look at? You will actually look at key, what I call it as key stakeholders for that role. Okay, or for the role set, key stakeholders. And then you will list out 3 or 4 critical competencies, and you will create a feedback form where you are actually capturing feedback on the behaviors of these competencies from the peer group or the key stakeholders, and everything will be anonymous, okay, so that to reduce the bias or the subjectivity. Let me tell you, multi-rater feedback has been really very helpful, and this tool is not supposed to be used for an evaluation purposes like promotion or, say, for example, judging. No, this is used mainly with the intent or a purpose of developing the person. So you have to use this tool very judiciously. Okay, so Vikram, so
I have a question.
This is one more tool we typically use at a top management level, multi-rater feedback. Yeah.
Nimala, you said something really profound, and I'm saying that because despite of using a lot of tools, connecting the dots is very important for the assessor, and hence, doing, those feedback and, stuff like that. Tell me, despite of 360-degree feedback, there is still going to be an element of subjectivity. And hence my question is, Gallup survey or employee pulse survey, would it be safe to say that they may not be 100% accurate, because at a time of conducting the survey, but at the time of taking the survey, there is a possibility of a certain situation or emotion which may override, my way of responding, right? And hence, in a 360-degree feedback, also it could be situational. For example, as a customer, I may be happy with your services today, but I may not be happy with your services after a few years or few days, because service is pretty transactional. You do this transaction properly, I will rate you well. You don't live up to my next transaction, I will not rate you well. So aren't these tools, and also Lena mentioned about MBTI, where people said that they fake it and stuff like that. So isn't there an element of subjectivity, and hence more referencing, more looking at more, raw data to really make a judicious call is required?
Absolutely, Vikram. Well, I've been a practitioner for almost more than 2 decades or 3 decades, been a consultant as well. It needs a lot. See, we have in the HR domain a lot of tools, right? We have a lot of tools. Assessment center was there. It was like, it was an explosion. Everybody, say a decade ago, everybody said assessment center. When balanced scorecard framework came, that was the key. Then thereafter, what was it? Strategic map. Then thereafter, competency mapping. Then it was like flavor of the month. So the HR heads would, because, being in the HR, so they would jump. They would meet in the conferences. Oh, this organization is doing this, so we also have to catch up with that. Okay. So yes, having said that, you're right in a way, saying that we have a lot of tools. Multi-rater feedback. I'm sure you've been in the industry for so many decades. Multi-rater feedback, 360 degrees feedback was so popular. But you have to use it. That's where that maturity of mind comes. How do you use that data? Judiciously. So therefore, for a person, you need to have that maturity as an assessor. So we talk about maturity of an assessor, proper training for an assessor, not that look at data with just data and that's it. You need to know that person, as you rightly stated. I may be in a certain emotion, so I'm doing a particular test, a psychometric test, but when I'm in an elated mood, maybe I respond differently. When I'm in a very different mood, maybe I respond differently. So what I need to look at also some kind of a backup material, in the sense I need to know about this person. That's where a lot more data, lot more talking happens. Then you are looking at pattern, ensuring, is there much variance? That's why we want more data points. Are you getting me? You are not taking decision by just one data point.
Yeah, let's take an example of last 11 months where due to pandemic lockdown, a lot of companies had to lay off. Environment became very hostile, and increments would not come through, promotions would not come through, right? And let's say in the midst of it, somewhere in the third quarter or fourth quarter, you end up doing a Gallup survey. Now, what is the expectation? What is the outcome that you will get out of that Gallup survey? Is very subjective as compared to a Gallup survey which you do after 1 or 2 years. Hopefully, pandemic would have
You do a Gallup survey immediately after increments.
and that will have a different flavor.
Huh?
And that will have a different flavor.
Right? Then you will know what it is. So even HR people are they are particular about in which वो बोलते हैं ना मौसम किस मौसम में ये सर्वे करना चाहिए so that I can get good satisfaction surveys, right?
True.
Therefore, I as a practitioner for 30-40 years, all that I can say is use it judiciously. That's where you have to get a lot more data and look at trending, look at patterns. And today what is riding high? Analytics as though that is the god now. Everywhere you are actually putting analytics in the forefront, saying, hey, at last we get a seat at the table, at last we are able to quantify things, at last we are able to take evidence-based decisions and not just gut-based decisions, right? So everybody talking about data. So look at data also, but look at all the other parameters, right? I say, okay, fine, data helps you, but to a certain extent, but yet data is not the sole thing to take a decision sometimes, right? That's how it is. Okay. So guys, I think, some of you might be thinking, so maybe a bio break, just to take about quick 5 to 6 minutes or 10 minutes. That's it. If anybody wants. Okay. Can we be back now? It is 35. Can we be back by 45 precisely?
Yeah. Good.
So that we can come back and then do the rest of it. Okay, guys. Take care.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome. Yeah, can you start? I presume all of you are there.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah. So typically what happens, we talked about what the flow in terms of we should know the competency profile against which we are evaluating the which establishes the criteria, then design an assessment matrix in terms of the tools or techniques which are going to assess those behaviors. So what happens is, what is at the core of the heart when we talk about behaviors? So we need to establish what we call as bars. So bars are behaviorally anchored rating scale. So it is just like a rating scale. The rating scale could be 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. Now, what you have done is you have anchored behavior at every rating scale, and it starts with the lowest, which is 1, as the ineffective behavior. So typically when you write bars, how do you go about writing bars for any particular competency? So you look at, what are those. So when you're looking at a job, okay, you now break down that job into its key performance dimensions or key responsibilities, what we call, or we call as tasks. Then you look at the next step 2, you look at what are those key behaviors which are being displayed by this task. So when a person undertakes this task, what are those behaviors which are being displayed? Then you start looking at those behaviors from ineffective to excellent, okay, and then give them a scale. So just to give you an example, for example, if there was a bar with 1 to 4, typically at 1, which is weak, it will look at the lowest, say in terms of, say, just communication, for example. So you will see that, it's mumbling, mutter, very ineffective, everything which is related to ineffective. While the maximum scale, which is 4, is all about, very good, which is forceful projection, effectiveness, understanding, listening to others' views, etc. So typically when we talk about a bar, we are talking about a bar with reference to a rating scale. And when I say rating scale, behaviors are anchored on that. How do you derive bars? You look at a job, you break it down into tasks, look at those behaviors which actually incorporate with the task, and then you start writing the bars. For example, once you have written the bars, the assessors are given these bars against which they are evaluating. Then what is the assessor's role? They are not supposed to make any judgment, etc. They have to closely observe. So observing becomes one of the critical competency for an assessor, in fact. So therefore, while observing vis-a-vis the bars, they have to make a documentation in terms of at what rating scale this behavior is being demonstrated. And that's how we create a document. Now, typically what happens, what is the assessor's role? So they are typically, if you have a group of 10 participants, there are at least minimum 3 to 4 assessors, because what happens is that every participant gets observed by 2 observers for a particular behavior, so that when the assessors, then they can calibrate, then they can come to a consensus and then give a report. So it's fairly very detailed kind of a report, which they have to produce only when all the assessors meet, discuss, calibrate, and come to a consensus. So therefore, a lot of training is given to the assessors. Then in the development center, typically they are also given a feedback in terms of what are the gap analysis, what kind of training they have to go through, etc. and etc. So Typically a development center can be used for training purposes, development purposes, and also for diagnosis purposes. So when you give a feedback, the gap analysis also can be given in this way. Like for example, if you look at this feedback sheet, so under team leadership, you also have given which exercises demonstrated the behavior, concerned behavior, which is the behavior in focus. So what are the strengths and what do you think need to be developed? So an assessment feedback also can be given in terms of explaining the strengths and weaknesses, which are called the gap analysis. Okay, guys. So therefore, this is to summarize what and how is an assessment center. Okay, these are certain exercises which I'm not planning to do now because it takes time. We are going to give it as a homework. But the most interesting thing is you have 2 exercises. Let us see how much time we have for exercises. So all of you have been given 2 attachments. So to begin with, we will do this exercise called just 1 minute, guys. Okay, moon landing exercise. Can all stop share? Just 1 second. Can all of you go through that moon landing exercise? I will just go to that document. Home. Okay. I have to go to the desktop. Share screen. Yeah. So this is a moon landing exercise. Vilma, how many of them are there? Will it be 2 groups or 1 group? Can you hear me?
Yes,
there are 2. How many? 1 group or 2 groups?
2 groups.
How many in number? How many are there?
4 and 3.
4 and 3. Okay, great, great. All right. So, so if you open up that sheet, so this is a very interesting exercise. Well, I don't want to tell you what it is going to actually assess or evaluate what behavior. I want you all to do this exercise first, and then we will discuss. So you are a member of the space crew, okay? Now you've actually, you've been scheduled to rendezvous with a mothership on the lighter surface of the moon. However, due to mechanical difficulties, your own ship was forced to land at a spot of 200 miles, right? Now, during the re-entry and landing, much of the equipment aboard was damaged. And since survival depends on reaching the mothership, there are some critical items. The most critical items available must be chosen. So there are 15 critical items here, now listed as being intact and undamaged after landing. Your task is to rank them in terms of priority or importance for your crew to allow them to reach the rendezvous point. Now place the number 1 if you think that is the most important item, and the least as the 15. So 1 will be the most important, then 2, and then 3, and so on. So you have the instructions there. First of all, what you need to do quickly here, you have to do your own ranking, mind you. Then you will be in your breakout. Thereafter, you will be given, Vilma, 10 minutes. That's good enough?
Yes,
huh?
yes.
Okay, 10 minutes. All right. Now, then you have to do a team ranking. Okay. So you just do that, my ranking and team ranking. And then after 10 minutes, what we are going to do is we will just come back. Okay. So what is the task at hand? You just read that introductory part of the exercise. Then you have 15 items. First, you do your own ranking without discussing. Then then you do your team ranking. That means you'll have one ranking of your own and there'll be one common ranking of the team. All right. Okay, guys, interesting it is. So 10 minutes or we will see, then otherwise we will extend it by another 2 minutes. Okay. Now, Vilma, quickly, can you break them into rooms?
Yeah.
Into their breakout rooms?
I have opened. Chat. It's there in the chat.
Hi team, she's saying, though I'm not sure.
No, there is nothing in the chat that I can.
Nothing in the chat. I'll just call her.
No
again.
document. Yeah. It was there. It
Vilma,
was,
hi.
let me just send it. It's on the WhatsApp. Just check the WhatsApp.
Vilma, it's not there in the chat. It's not there in the WhatsApp.
It's not there. Let me see.
In WhatsApp, you have shared the exercise, but not the salvage item list.
Yes, moon landing exercise.
But the list of salvage items, that page is missing. It's only the case study and the instructions.
Okay. Fine. I'm just. Hello? I'm there. हाँ. हाँ. ठीक है. Got it?
Yeah.
You got it, Vikram?
Yeah, it's there in the chat, and now it's there in the WhatsApp group also.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Wilma.
Okay. So first we need to do is by our own, and then we need to do it
Yes,
in a team.
yes, yes.
Vikram, are you doing it on Excel or you're writing it down?
I'm actually writing it down.
Okay, because later if we need to share it.
Yes, yes, I understand. So let's do one thing. I'm a little constrained on the Excel part from the system. So maybe if you or somebody else
I'll
can
try to do it.
put
I'll
up the
take a
Excel.
little bit of time, but then
No problem.
I'll just do it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Is required to make it more functional for them. So those are the buckets I would basic
What?
was the food, oxygen food, and then what are the aids or tools they would require to keep them afloat, and in case they don't have any way to go. So
So what we can also do is we can just do the ranking of the 4 most critical thing and the 4 least critical thing.
Are directional first in nature. First half is directional. The second half is basis the fact that let's assume that I'm in the right direction. I also should be able to survive in the meantime, right? So you also please feel free to share, and I will also share the points.
Give me 5 minutes. I'll make my points.
Yeah,
I have taken it on my
Excel. Magnetic compass. That's my second point. I have third point, which is 5 gallons of water. Fourth point, 200 pounds of tanks of oxygen. Now, why water in tank is because I also need to ensure that the place which doesn't have gravity, I'm not floating, right? I'm grounded to the surface. So I need weight in the lunar mobile that I'm traveling. Then something called signal flare, so that I can shoot up in the air and show where my spot is. I need stellar map. So map is again going to give me direction. Then solar power FM receiver, so that I can receive any transmission being sent on my way. So up till about these 7-8 points.
But is there any use of solar power? Because as you said, you're on the darker side.
Solar power FM receiver.
Yeah, but as you said, you're on the darker side. Yeah. Is it going to be any use of the solar power?
As I move towards the brighter side, as my receiver starts getting the sunlight, it will get activated, and then I can start communicating. So it is primarily on the direction side of it. Can change. Feel free to.
Okay. So Vikram, I had one query, that is 200 miles from the
from the landing spot.
Yeah, from the landing spot. So how much time period can you just approximate, like how much time period we require to reach or something like that?
Does it say that? Does it say that?
No, I'm just asking that how to imagine that. So if it is just 200 miles, or is it going to take number of days? What approximate number of days?
Yeah. Typically in a
survive.
In an Earth situation, 200 miles would mean about 4 hours. Jaipur is, for example, less than 300 miles. So you can reach Jaipur from Delhi in about 4.5 hours. But in a moon surface, you don't know what is the terrain ahead of you. Gravity is an issue. So you will not be able to drive at a pace that you will be on Earth.
Okay. So there is recorded. Just give me a minute.
Yeah, sure.
Mahesh has also sent his ranking. You can have a look.
During re-entry and landing, much of the equipment aboard.
Mahesh, great points.
Okay, so one is again mine is going to be a box of matches. Second is food concentrate.
Yep.
Okay. Then it will be compass, magnetic compass.
Oh.
And portable heating unit, as you said, will be on the colder side in case. Will be the fourth one. Okay, 2 100 pounds of tanks of oxygen. This is again important. So I think this will be 4 and a stellar map. How does it help? Can you just tell me?
It's a map. It'll give you direction. So I don't know what is the meaning of stellar out here. What I can understand is map, like magnetic compass, right?
That can give you the direction.
Direction, right? Absolutely. So map, compass, signal flare,
and self-inflating life raft. So is that the thing that is going to help you travel?
No, but 200 miles in case if in between you have to stop, you have to halt, and you have to take a rest, you have to take food or water. So you can inflate the raft, and you can make it a makeshift kind of a tent. I'm assuming that have something, take some rest, because oxygen is at short supply. So even if you walk 1 kilometer, that's going to be very taxing as compared to walking on Earth, where there is a lot of oxygen everywhere. But walking on Moon, where there is oxygen is artificially supplied onto you, you would need to take rest from time to time. So that's where this can help you.
Five minutes more.
So Manali, very clearly, I can see direction and survival as 2 themes which are emerging out from here. So you can put together.
What I'm doing is now I'm just sharing my screen, so we all can do our team thing also.
Okay.
Yeah. Is this?
That's visible.
Can you see this?
Yeah. Good point.
So this would be the I'm just
Manali, let's do like this. Yeah. I think that'll be good. That'll be. So can I share my list?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you can do is that you can just do ranking against my name, and we can take Mahesh's list also.
Okay. Yes, Vikram.
Okay. First is Matchbox.
1.
Okay. Magnetic compass. 2nd.
You've written it that way?
Yeah, I've written that way. So you can just put 2 against wherever magnetic compass.
Yes. 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The stellar map.
3.
Okay. Solar power FM receiver.
4.
No.
Sorry.
Row 17.
4.
Okay. Signal flare. Next.
Row 15.
Okay. Yeah. Then 200-liter pond tank of oxygen. That's the next number.
5.
Yeah. 5 gallons of water.
6.
Okay. Next.
No, you have put 2 5s.
Yeah, it's a duplication, I believe.
So this would be 6, then 7.
Thank you. Thank you. Then first aid kit containing whatever, right? Then parachute silk. Thank you. Self-inflating life raft. Yeah. Then food concentrate. 1 case of hydrated milk. Is it hydrated? You've written dehydrated. Is it hydrated or dehydrated?
Hydrated.
Yeah. Okay.
No,
Anyway.
1 case of dehydrated.
Okay. All right. Okay, my bad. Next is portable heating unit. Then 2.45 caliber pistol, and the last is 50 feet of nylon rope. Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I can read out for Vikas's. Mahesh's. I'm so sorry.
Yes.
First is matchbox.
1.
It's followed by oxygen. There it is. Next is solar power. Next is compass. Yeah, next is hearing unit, FM hearing unit, I believe. Yeah.
That you have already given a 3 FM receiver.
Okay, there is some hearing unit he has written. Is there some hearing unit?
I don't know.
Yes, first aid. Row 16. Row 16.
It's injection needles.
Yeah, hearing
Okay,
unit.
so this
First
is 5.
aid, same.
Injection unit can be next. Injection unit can be next. So please kar dijiye. And
Yeah,
then
5.
is a map, stellar map.
6. Yes.
Then signal. He's written signal.
Flares.
Signal flare. Yeah.
7. Yes.
Signal flare. Then is nylon rope.
8. Okay.
Then is 100-pound tank. Sorry. It's 5 gallons of water.
Okay. 9.
Then raft.
Then
Raft.
Yeah. Self-inflating life raft.
raft.
Then food concentrate.
11.
Then 2.45 pistol, caliber pistol. Then map, which is stellar map.
No, stellar map is already done.
Oh, so he's written twice. So please leave it. And then last is milk. Dehydrated or hydrated milk, whatever.
13.
There is one last one left.
Portable heating.
Yeah.
I'm putting it 13.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. We're good to go, Ji. Thank you.
Fine. So we'll move out now.
Yeah.
In points, what we have to calculate?
No, we have to arrange it in.
Yeah, that you'll do it in the main room. Okay, fine.
Thank you.
Hello, Vikram.
Is everybody back to the room?
Ma'am, sorry, my laptop got comped off. And
In fact, mine also, in a minute, it went off, so I suddenly realized, yeah.
Oh,
But everybody's back.
just, I'm
Is everybody back?
just logging in through my laptop again. Just kept it on.
No problem.
I don't think so.
No problem.
I hope that sheet is there.
So at least some of you who are there, how did you feel this interesting exercise?
Good.
Good. Quite interesting. I'm going to practice it, execute it with my team as well.
No. Now I'll tell you some interesting
Debrief.
observations and while processing, since we have the recording. And I will also, somebody said, Lena was also saying, how often does it come right, etc. Can I fake it? Now this recording, and I'll give you a questionnaire, and then I will ask you to profile your role in a team, which is called Wellbeing role, and I will show you your recordings to support the data. Okay? Okay. Is everybody back? All right. So I will first of all give you this the score. Okay, you are able to see. So what you need to do, first of all, take a quick look at the score, guys. You can actually, so this is the score. This has been done by, what is the subject matter experts and a lot of research and all that. So this is the ranking, okay? You want to do the ranking? One is, you have it there?
Yeah, we have done it in an Excel sheet ourselves.
No. This, write down the expert ranking as well.
Oh, okay.
Shall I just say 15 box of matches? This is expert ranking, okay?
Okay.
This is the NASA ranking done by the NASA experts. 15, 4, box of food concentrate is 4, 50 feet is 6, parachutes silk is 8, portable heating unit is 1313, .45 caliber pistol 1111, 1 case of dehydrated milk 12, 100 pounds tanks of oxygen number 1, stellar map number 3, self-inflating life raft number 9. Okay, you got that? All right. What do you need to do now? There's a magnetic compass 14, 5 gallons of water 2, signal flares 10, first aid kit 7, solar power 5. In fact, Wilma will send you this expert ranking along with their reasons as well. All right?
Okay.
Now, let us just do a little processing of this entire data. Say, for example, just score your data, or so this is the scoring which she will also send it to you, and you will know where you are typically. Now, the essence of this game was exercise. What was it? First of all, you had an individual task, right? You had an individual task. You had a group task. Now, how much time on an average did all of you take for the individual task? Maybe 5 minutes?
Yeah,
maximum.
Okay. But for the group task, must have taken about more than 10 to 15 minutes, right?
10 minutes.
True.
So typically, why does it take the same task? You had to rate them. Individually, you took much lesser time, but when you had to do it as a group task with consensus and have one ranking, it took a longer time. Why do you think it took? Anybody?
Yeah, because the rationale,
Convincing.
the rationale of how people are ranking is different.
Opinions are different, right?
True,
So
true.
How
So we need to consider everybody's
Perspective is
perspective.
different, ma'am.
perspectives are different because they come from different backgrounds. So
Analyzing it.
So is it a challenge to work in a group? So you have to look at various things. So when you're doing a simulation of this nature, can you actually, then people are demonstrating different behaviors. For example, in this A, you're looking at decision making, but if you have to come to the decision making as a group task with a consensus, what are those behaviors? Who is aggressive? Who is assertive? Who is wanting to actually collaborate? Who is wanting to do consensus building? Who is actually being a gatekeeper and saying, hey, let us finish the task fast, let us just do the ranking. It happens now. Hey, time is up. We just need to do the ranking. Somebody is being an ideator saying more ideas. No, it can be this perspective. Or somebody is also looking at, this is my ranking. Let me force fit that ranking to the group task. You agree? It happens, right? In fact, you will see that, very often when you're doing a group task. So therefore, when we are looking, so a lot of behaviors can be evaluated depending on what needs to be evaluated. That's why group discussion, especially sometimes leader-led or sometimes without any leader, you just throw a group and say, hey, this is the task. Now, there is no leader, there is no hierarchy, there is no power, there is no control. Now, who is going to initiate? Who is going to be a kind of a self-appointed leader, and who is going to throw his views on the others, right? Like, for example, I was observing this Nichols group. Okay, so initially, Ram was trying to tell, hey, we have the time, but everybody said, no, we are doing our individual task, So especially when there is no leader, how do you actually convince? How do you become a champion? Trying to tell, hey, this is our task. We have a time limit. How do you prioritize? It's a challenge. So it takes a lot to do those things. So it's a very good method of when you wanting to evaluate certain key behaviors. Now you have personally seen how a group discussion will help you if you have to do some consensus building or there is some kind of a group task to be achieved. Now, when you actually see a variance between your individual task rating and group task rating, you will see there's a variance, right? And sometimes it might be very wide, the variance, or sometimes it might be very narrow. So when you look at that, hey, you will see that when it is very wide, that means I have rated as 1, but the group has rated as 4. Maybe it is 3 or 4 that variance. Then what does it mean? You actually bought in, you were collaborative, and you agreed upon the group's opinions, and they said, yes, we'll go in for it. Are you looking at that? You had a ranking of 1, but because the group task was priority and the group agreed on certain ranking, you were ready to forego your own kind of a ranking, which was 1, and you said, no, we'll go with 4. Now, am I able to kind of, get across my point of view, what happens in a group, right? So now, I will be sending you this course. Have a look at it. The interesting fact in this is that there is a recording as well. So what we are going to do is, I'm going to send you a questionnaire which is called Wellbeing Questionnaire. Have you heard? Anybody has heard this?
No.
Wellbeing Questionnaire. Now, what this questionnaire is, it will typically say what kind of a role you play in a group. Are you a timekeeper? Are you an ideator? You can have 2-3 roles because there are typically 8 or 9 roles in Wellbeing, which we call it as Wellbeing roles. Now, when you are working in a group, you can wear the cap of 2 roles or 1 role or 3 roles. Now, you fill in that questionnaire, okay? And you need to send it at least in 3 or 4 because for the next session, we will be doing all this analysis also to a certain amount. And with the recording, we will go through the recording and see typically what kind of roles were you exhibiting. Because I have this demonstrated behavior right in front of me. But you may assume that this is what you are.
Is it?
So let us see if there is a conflict. or if there is something. Okay.
Is it possible for you to share feedback right now? Because you would have.
I saw one group. Yeah, that's why I asked Wilma to also watch the other group. Yes, tell me so. Yeah, Vikram.
No, I was just saying that is it possible if you could share feedback, basis Wellbeing Questionnaire, with whatever was your observation. It's going to be a very quick one for all of us to understand.
No, like for example, I could see in that there was a gatekeeper. Oh, we have only 2 minutes. Nikhil said we have only 2 minutes. Let's finish it. Gatekeeper means was saying, and result. Finisher. So he was also wearing a finisher's role, saying that let's finish. We have only 1 minute or 2 minutes. So in any group, while the group is actually in dynamics, this is called group dynamics. When the group is discussing, etc., and it has a target or a goal to achieve within certain times. So the participants wear the hat of 1 or 2 roles. You will find that there was somebody who was always giving up, like Ram. He was talking about, he was giving his views. Ideator. He was giving his views. And say it could be like this also, it could be like this also, giving his opinions, etc. Okay, so I want you to go back. I will send this questionnaire. Look at yourself and say, typically I am like this. And at best, like Vikram said, if you fake, then this is not an evaluation tool or technique. So you only get to know if you are authentic in your responses. You get to know what you are. Okay. So I want you to just fill in this. So what we will do is I've already sent you a Firobi. Then I have sent you, I think, this one questionnaire. And there was another questionnaire, is it? So we'll make a nice snapshot of your personality profile for you to just look at it and say, hey, is this the way it is? And we'll also be doing BEIs. So focused at certain critical competencies. So this is also not to learn. I mean, in addition to learning BEIs, you'll also get a good understanding of yourself as well. Okay, so this is how we will go about for the next session, and I hope you got to a kind of an understanding in terms of what is an assessment center, what goes about it, what kind of tools and techniques we use, what is it for, and the kind of the designing of the competency matrix, etc. And you have a lot of input material. You can always go through it. And I will discuss with Wilma if there are any kind of doubts or something. You can always have a small session where it can be called a doubt clearing session. Okay, guys.
Sure.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Anybody who wants to share how did they feel, because it's always very important when you go through simulations to kind of get some, how did they feel, what did they find when they were doing the group task. Yeah. Anybody. Just 1 or 2. I just want to get a feel of it. How did you feel when you had to, kind of forgo your ranking and you were actually, ranking?
It was more to get into a different perspective, different people's perspective as well. Like for me, the rope was not very much significant, but Leela, she told that on moon, to keep everyone together, will require something to hold back.
Okay.
So that changed. So that changed my ranking for it. On the other hand, I also said that matchbox is the least important because there is no oxygen there, and there won't be any usage of matchbox because it is a. So that's how I helped her in terms of changing her ranking. So that's it's more to understand both the sides, put your point as well as understand the other's point as well.
Yeah.
Approach.
Okay, but typically what happens, just take here and now to there and then in an organization, what happens typically, because here you didn't have any stakes, but when sometimes typically what happens when you do group works, etc., there's a lot more there, at stakes. And so you can imagine a person, how open or closed to other person's point of view. So how important it is when as an HR department. So typically what happens, at least I ensure that when we are having high project teams with high value deliveries, we also do this, personality profiles as to how will the team be able to work together. So that's where we will understand, because what happens, it's very important for the team to really work on a high collaborative kind of an index, right? Otherwise the projects don't, finish off on time. So not only with the knowledge and skills, but we also look at their personality profiles in terms of, because we need to get a nice complementary set of behaviors, or else what happens, there are too many kind of issues in terms of behavioral issues which crop up, right? So guys, I think that was very interesting, and all of you really took it, very interestingly, and did this exercise. But let me tell you, I was observing one group and I could really see a lot of behaviors coming in. So let me go through the recording and some of your personality profiles, and we can throw some little more light on that. Okay. All right. So thank you guys so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
We
Nirmala.
have you have an attachment with another exercise. So maybe you could do it, because we don't have that kind of a time. This is it's an in-basket exercise. It would have taken a lot more time. It takes about an hour or so. So I would request all of you to just go through it, do it at your spare time. It will give you a kind of a feel of what is an in-basket exercise, and how do you delegate, how do you prioritize, how do you plan, etc. Okay, guys?
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
Thank you, one and all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Ma'am.